Hello and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe,
And I'm Dave.
and as you can see, the room is in no better state than it was on Tuesday. We've got nowhere to move things at the moment. We're clearing out the garage this weekend and taking all the rubble to the tip from all the renovation stuff. And so hopefully I'll be able to move things around soon. I'm also looking forward to next Thursday, at which point I can open the windows and the cat can actually be allowed out the property, because that'll have been 2 weeks. I'm going to lose the cat. Hello, everybody. Hey, Segmentation Fault, Josiah, and Bearded Heretic. How you doing? Oh, I forget you can't respond. I'll just have to ask you instead, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. A little bit shattered, but I shotgunned a very strong coffee before coming on stream, so...
Oh, good shout. You been busy doing more coursework?
Yeah. I had a few problems today because I ran out of disk space installing all this stuff.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it didn't tell me I'd run out of disk space. It just errored out. Just said, cannot install. It's like, well, why not? Why not? And then I looked and I had like 80 megabyte left midway
Blimey.
through the install. Yeah.
You got
It doesn't let you change from the C drive.
Oh, I hate.
No, you
I
have.
hate
Yeah.
sloppy development. There are so many programs that just force install to the C drive, and you're just like, why? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, your C drive should be OS only. You know, you don't want anything else on there. You want to keep it completely clean. Maybe like your favorite program, like one, something you want to run that lightning quick. Everything else, you just want space. You know, you get something like a 500 gigabyte M2 drive or something like that, and just make sure your computer's lightning quick, and get a massive green drive or something like that for everything else.
Well, that's the thing. It's a 128 gig SSD M2 drive for the C drive, and a 1 terabyte drive for the D drive. And the software I was installing is a virtual machine, so it installed the virtual machine software, and then needed to install the OS for the virtual machine, and would only do that on the C drive.
Ah.
Yeah.
How frustrating. I'm sure there's some way around it, but I can't think of it right now. It's far too late in the day.
Yeah. By the time I was done, it was way too late in the day, and my brain was already fried, and it's like, well, it's installed now, that'll fucking do.
Yeah, fair. You know, there was time having a 128 gig SSD would be fine for your OS. I remember, I think even Windows 8 it was fine, but I've got the same in this current machine. It's only 128 gig SSD. It's not even an M2. I mean, it's 10 years old. They weren't around then. And yeah, it's so difficult actually just keeping it clear, because so many programs just install it or use it as temp or anything like that. And it's the number of issues we actually had when we started streaming, because I didn't realize that everything was being used on swap space there. And
yeah. I still remember the days when a 10 megabyte hard drive was big.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think I ever had one that small, but my first computer, after my VIC-20, I guess, but my first PC was probably, I think it had an 80 megabyte hard drive.
Yeah. Well, because I was doing the YTS IT course back in the mid 80s, it was like 10 megabyte hard drives and MS-DOS 3.2. Didn't take up a lot of space.
No. It's crazy to think, actually, today that phones are so much more powerful than any of the PCs that we would have had even 10 years ago, in some respects, some of the high end of them. Technology is amazing. And you also consider we basically went to the moon with something with less power than a calculator.
Yeah. My microwave has more power.
Hey Philip, nice to have you here. I never had one that small out of context, Joe. Yeah, that's great. We've got a little room on our Discord server called Out of Context, where we literally crop each other's text messages and things like that completely out of context. I suppose we could start adding videos to that too, couldn't we, Luke? If you care to. So anyway, we're not here to chat computers, as much as I'd love to have an evening chat about computers, because I love them. We're here to have a conversation about God being dead. But Dave, that's not exactly what we're talking about. Do you want to fill us in a little bit more?
Yeah. A lot of people kind of misinterpret what Nietzsche was saying. They think he's saying God is dead, you know. And I've got the actual excerpt here in front of me, which I'll read out after. But basically what he was saying was that they'd reached a point at that time where God was losing ground in society. The church was no longer the center of power. The church was no longer the focus of people's lives. And if you think about today, even Christians don't make church the center of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they go once a week, you know, they read the Bible every now and again, but work, family, everything like that takes precedence over church. So that's what he was saying, is that if you think about during scholastic philosophy, so like people like Aquinas and Anselm, philosophy was very much God-centered. And then Descartes came along and he sort of changed it. And then Hume came along and people like that. And the focus of philosophy became skepticism and pushing God out of the center of focus. And that's what he meant, is that God was being killed off by society, by the changing of values, by philosophers. And that's what he kind of discusses. Because he felt that if God was killed off with nothing to replace him, people would slip into nihilism. And a lot of people seem to think Nietzsche was a nihilist when he really wasn't. He was actually against nihilism.
There seems to be a lot that people get wrong about Nietzsche.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Including the pronunciation of his name.
Yeah. Nietzsche?
Which is easy to do. I mean, I get names wrong all the time.
I get my name wrong all the time. Well, when you've been studying all day, you know, your brain's a bit fried by the end of it.
Yeah, I have the same busy days at work. A couple of years ago, I ended up calling my boss Dad.
Is there something you wanted to tell your boss?
To be fair, it was an easy mistake. His name was Dan, and you know, so it was close enough. I was like, "Oh, come on, Dad," or something.
I can relate to that. So should I read out the piece from Nietzsche, just to get us started with? It's only a few paragraphs long, and it's quite vivid in its imagery. Have you not heard of that madman who lit a lantern in the bright morning hours, ran to the marketplace, and cried incessantly, "I seek God! I seek God!" As many of those who did not believe in God were standing around just then, he provoked much laughter. "Has he got lost?" asked one. "Did he lose his way like a child?" asked another. "Or is he hiding? Is he afraid of us? Has he gone on a voyage, emigrated?" Thus they yelled and laughed. The madman jumped into their midst and pierced them with his eyes. "Whither is God?" he cried. "I will tell you. We have killed him, you and I. All of us are his murderers. But how did we do this? How could we drink up the sea? who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What were we doing when we unchained this earth from its sun? Whither is it moving now? Whither are we moving? Away from all suns. Are we not plunging continually? Backward, sideward, forward, in all directions. Is there still any up or down? Are we not straying as though through an infinite nothing? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Has it not become colder? Is night continually closing in on us? Do we not need to light lanterns in the morning? Do we hear nothing as yet of the noise of the gravediggers who are burying God? Do we smell nothing as yet of the divine decomposition? Gods too decompose. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe the blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement? What sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? There has never been a greater deed, and whoever is born after us, for the sake of the deed, he will belong to a higher history than all history hitherto. Here the madman fell silent and looked again at his listeners, and they too were silent and stared at him in astonishment. At last he threw his lantern on the ground, and it broke into pieces and went out. I have come too early, he said then. My time is not yet. This tremendous event is still on its way, still wandering. It has not yet reached the ears of men. Lightning and thunder require time. The light of the stars requires time. Deeds, though done, still require time to be seen and heard. This deed is still more distant from them than most distant stars, and yet they have done it themselves. It has been related further that on the same day the madman forced his way into several churches, and there struck up his Requiem Aeternam Deo. Led out and called to account, he is said always to have replied nothing but, what, after all, are these churches now if they are not the tombs and the sepulchres of God? And that's it.
I was kind of waiting for like a punchline there. Sounded like my black and white night joke.
It kind of is, yeah. That's kind of the way Nietzsche wrote. He had a bit of an ego, but he had a pretty good sense of humor at the same time. But that's very different to how most people, when they say, oh, Nietzsche says God is dead. Yeah. That's very different to how most people relate the God is dead statement.
Out of context much. Yeah. Very interesting. What does it mean?
Well, essentially what he's saying is that all of the things that we remove when we remove the church, we remove the center of all values for a lot of people. We remove a part of the community, a part of something that the community revolves around. We remove moral guidance, so we remove the light. The churches are no longer meeting places, they're just empty tombs. We remove reasons for purpose and things like that. So he then goes on to argue after this that, we need to learn to, if we're going to kill God, which is a great deed, we need to learn to replace these things.
That's kind of like the conversation we were having with Luke on his channel the other day.
Very much so.
because I mean, I kind of understand how we can one fall into patterns that we have fallen in once we've lost religion, sort of falling into another tribe and becoming, so anti the tribe we used to be in, but equally feel completely lost as well,
Yeah.
unable to deal with things like the death and fear of death, becoming nothing. Where do we ground things like morality and all of these questions? And I think that we do have some really good answers to these as well. Not everything, of course, but I almost think that some of us atheists just take a really blasé approach to it. It's all just chemicals, mate. Yeah, fuck it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you see, that's the nihilism that Nietzsche wanted to try to stop. When he says we shall have to become our own gods, or we shall have to become gods in order to sort of appear worthy of this deed of killing God, that's what he means. He means that we shouldn't just fall into this, well, everything's permissible, it's all just chemical reactions, nothing is of value. We have to learn to replace those values. We have to learn what to value. Nietzsche very much was in favor of art as giving a sense of value, things like that.
What other things did he strongly value?
Opium.
What a guy.
His ego. But he says it's things like art that make us greater than animal. We have the ability to create these meanings and create these values. So that's what we should learn to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's trying to find almost an agreement for the common ground there, isn't it? It's like some of the common arguments against morality having any sort of objective nature, because some people go, well, I don't agree with that. And they think that that's what makes it subjective. And
yeah. And if you think back to the discussion that we had a long time ago now about Nietzsche and his genealogy of morals, he discusses how we need to create these systems of morals, even if there are different layers of morals for different kinds of people. There is still some kind of common grounds that we have to find in order to give meaning to our lives and to enable a society to function and flourish, and for great artists to come about, or great mathematicians, things like that.
Yeah. I think the thing I actually liked about that Nietzsche conversation we're having is it does sort of go. So this is when we were having a discussion about his take on morality, and how it could, there are people that need a different sense of morality for what they're like. Like the artist that might be inspired by a bit of misery and drunkenness and things like that. It could actually be positive for them to be in that state, but you wouldn't necessarily want your surgeon to be in that same sort of state. So their behaviors, they have different objectively good behaviors that they could have.
Exactly. And it depends on the purpose and what they're trying to achieve and what they can contribute. So there are sort of a form of subjectivity to the thing, but it's still objective to those kind of categories.
Yeah. Well, it's like we've said, morality is far more complex than a simple subjective versus objective. It's combination of the both and more.
Yeah. It's one of those discussions that we should be having as atheists, and this is one of the things that Nietzsche talks about. We should be creating these moral systems, because if we're going to kill off God as such, and we're going to make it so that this central sun, this giver of values and giver of reasons to live, we need to replace it. We can't just talk somebody out of believing in God and where they get their purpose, and then say, well, it's up to you, mate. Cheers, bye. I'm just glad you don't believe in God anymore.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's some of the bad things that we see about conversations that have online as well, and people that do just turn around and give these bite-sized little quips of, well, it's all just subjective, well, it's all just chemicals, and you're just like, well, how's that helping anyone? You know, this person's in pain, they've just lost their father, or, you know, a friend, or they need some support with their addiction, and we're not giving it to them, we're not doing anything. And apparently It's the premise of Luke's book, which, Luke, now that I've moved, as soon as I dig out my tablet, I will start reading, I promise. I'd also just like to take this moment to say hello to Opie, Cheshire, Iron Charioteer, and J Mike, who have all joined the chat. And Iron Charioteer says, Godisdead, I want a piece of that Catholic pie. 170 billion, 70 billion. How much is that each?
I mean, that if God was killed off and the churches became tombs, then that money would be put back into circulation. And if we learn to create new values, that money could be put elsewhere, like medicine, healthcare, starving people, education.
And it goes back to there are things that have value, regardless of if people do personally value them. Like you mentioned there, like medicine and education and things like that, they add value to our society. So we can actually see a lot of this money that is just stuck with churches isn't doing much. But the other side is churches do sometimes do a lot of charity work. Not every church, but there isn't as much charity work that we atheists do. There aren't really any organizations doing things, especially locally. There's quite often big ticket items elsewhere in the world, but there's never really anything that is done locally. So again, all that money, where would it go? We'd need to pump it back into things, but we don't sit down and actually talk about things that really matter and how we can improve things. We're just, oh, well, you know, we're not a community, we don't do it, someone else can sort it out.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the problems, is there is this thing in the atheist community where people go, well, there is just no community. You know, atheists only have one thing in common, and that's how it should stay. If atheists want to find this, they should go look at this thing, and which is fine. Like Nietzsche argues, casting off God means we allow ourselves to build new values and create new purpose and become who we always were intended to be, these great beings. But if all we're doing is going, well, it's not up to me, mate, then we don't fulfill that purpose.
No, far from it. And that's just it. I think we all do tend to shirk our responsibilities. And I don't really know how to broach that either, because even when you try and have these conversations, there is this attitude of it's not my problem.
Yeah.
And we atheists claim that we are the more moral creatures, don't we? Yet it's someone else's problem to sort everything out.
Yeah.
If we always leave it for someone else to do, then nothing will get done.
No, that's it. And if we're going to talk people out of these systems that they already exist in and they get fulfillment and purpose and value and all that from, and we say, well, we just think you're stupid for believing in God, just stop doing that. Well, what then? You know, how do you stop those people from just delving into nihilism?
Yeah.
And I mean, theoretically, nihilism is the case. You know, it's part of what is entailed from what we argue from sort of the universe has no purpose. We have no purpose. You know, we just exist. There is nothing inherent in the universe that gives things value. So nihilism is the case. But that doesn't mean that we, as meaning-making beings can't create these things. I mean, we all do it every day. We create value in the TV shows that we watch. This is what cheers us up. This is what makes our family happy, sitting around watching TV. Or me and my friends like watching this sport and supporting this team. It gives us purpose for the weekend. So we all do it to some degree.
Yeah, definitely. We've had a couple of comments come in. So, Peace the Wealth Seeker says, funny Christians give 10% of their income and have strong communities where they never leave a crab in a bucket. I'm not sure on the crab in a bucket statement. Maybe that's a joke I'm just missing. And you're right. I mean, there are Christian communities that do that. Not every Christian gives 10%. They don't all give a tithe. And there are a lot of very selfish Christian churches. Look at Joel Osteen and his megachurch, look at how selfish some Christians can be as well. But you're right. I mean, this is what we're talking about here. We atheists don't have the sort of community that and the comfort that religion can bring. And we often, when we're talking about this thing, a lot of people just go, well, no, it's not my problem. They almost take a libertarian view to it, rather than being the sociable creatures that we're supposed to be. But then...
I mean, if you think here... Sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, if you think here of something like the Muslims and zakat, where they have to give such and such an amount of their money, and the madrasas and mosques are supposed to use that to help the homeless, the poor, it's demanded by their religion to give charity and to help those that are impoverished and sort of poor and starving. And if you think of Sikhs, how many times do you see them at the center of any emergency feeding everybody? And that comes from their religion.
Mm-hmm.
And there are individual atheists that will do this kind of stuff and sometimes piggyback off the religious because they already have this network set up. And there are atheists groups that try to do this, Atheists for the Homeless, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to be on a bigger scale. If we're going to show that we don't need God for these meanings and these values, it needs to become a bigger scale. The atheist community sort of has to admit that there is a community and start figuring these things out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we even know someone that works with her church, her local church, because there isn't any other charity work. She wants to give back to her community, and the only place that she can do that is going through her church. So that's what she does. And so, I mean, fair play to her. It's great that she's doing it. Yeah. It's just a shame that we don't offer the same thing as ourselves. So I've got a few more comments coming in. Peace and Wealth Seeker also says, in my experience, atheists are self-centered, greedy, and ignorant. Well, I'm sorry that that's been your experience. I must admit, I've met some atheists who are like that. I've met some Christians who are like that. I've met some Muslims who are like that. I've probably met someone of every ontological position who is like that. And I've also met some really kind, genuine, and intelligent theists, atheists, and other forms of non-theists. So, I think that your experience must be limited to people on Twitter. Luke likes trains.
Been playing a game on the Echo called Pointless, and it damn well loves questions about trains.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'll be contacting Luke every time I get stuck.
Actually, I keep forgetting. I've got mine set up in the kitchen, so when I'm cooking, I should dial in and have a game. He also says, I do believe atheism is a huge trap or mental control thing. Trust me, I read Richard Dawkins' book since I was 13, but since I've altered my thinking to be more open-minded, to at least be agnostic. So I think that's a strange thing to say. It's a mental control thing in itself. I think that there are certain takes on atheism, like the American atheists and things like that, who are trying to pigeonhole people into a particular view, much like religions try and do to their believers. When you say Richard Dawkins' book, which one? I assume you mean The God Delusion. It's not great. But if you were to read The Selfish Gene, that was pretty cool. Because when he actually sticks to something he knows about, he's actually quite a good writer.
Really?
Yeah. So, yeah, listen to him on evolution and ignore everything else he says. Yeah, as Philip says, Dawkins is pretty terrible when it comes to critiquing philosophically informed theism. Yes.
Yeah.
So crabs in a bucket is a metaphor in the States when one crab almost gets out of the bucket, the others drag me down. Fair. I haven't heard that one before. Is that a Southern metaphor by any chance? I actually lived in Michigan for a while, and I definitely didn't hear it there. And even though I visited the Southern states quite often, I probably didn't interact with people in the same way that I did when I went to school out there. But yes, as Philip says, it's not even close to the best atheistic philosophy has to offer, and that's true. Have a look at people like Graham Oppy and Stephen Law, and actually get involved in the better side of atheism, because there's the better side of theism than the fundies that you see online, and there is the better side of atheism. Or if you're more interested in YouTube channels, check out Real Atheology. They're absolutely fantastic. Yeah, there's definitely better sides to both theism and atheism than you will see on social media. Now we tend not to be focused too much on the philosophy of religion ourselves. We're more tackling bad philosophy and discussing things that interest us, which is why tonight we're discussing Nietzsche, and something that we atheists almost always get wrong about him and things he says. So that's actually the focus of tonight's stream. So I do apologize if you felt pulled in by the title "God is Dead," but that is the part of the quote. So
Yeah.
Hey, Twisted, how you doing?
Hey, Twisted.
But yes, sorry, Dave. Carry on.
I can't really remember what I was saying.
Excellent.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you think of like when we did our video with Luke, some of the responses were like, "This isn't for atheists. This is for humanists. We shouldn't be putting this on atheists." And I think that's one of the problems. You have something like the ACA, who has created this sort of lack of belief definition in order to gain political power and political presence and like voting power. But literally, that's all they use it for is, I guess, science informing of science and things like that, and stopping creationism in schools. But there is much more that could be done with that kind of thing. And if we are going to say, well, this thing unites us, then why not use that thing that unites us to build on something better that adds value and creates meaning?
Definitely. And if we atheists actually do claim that we are smarter, more logical, more rational, more moral than theists, and then sit back and do nothing and say it's someone else's problem, are we really any of those things?
We're not living up to it. Yeah. And I mean, there seems to be this animosity like, oh, they're Christians, they're Muslims, so we should hate them. And yet you have them going out and doing these things. Well, why not sort of unite with them to help achieve these things? They're wanting some of the same things that we do, even if we differ on certain positions. If we want to make the world better, then why not work with them to make the world better? And eventually, if as a lot of atheists want, where there is just no God belief anymore and everybody shuns religion, what then?
Yeah. Now what?
Now what? Yeah. Yes, individuals can create individual meaning and, but we don't really want some kind of Ayn Rand thing where, well, you just be selfish and go after your own desires and that'll eventually achieve sort of this harmony and balance. I don't see that ever really happening.
No, I mean, if everybody is fighting for purely their own desires and their own wants, well, it'd just create conflict, surely.
Yeah.
Especially when there is desires that we would say are immoral. But of course we couldn't if it was, purely subjective.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We all share this society. Most people will think that gratuitous suffering is bad. That's one of the arguments that most of us use against religion. Gratuitous suffering is bad. If there's a God, he could solve this gratuitous suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows there's no God. Well, okay. So like Nietzsche says, we have to become gods and solve these problems ourselves. And I know we're not all powerful and omniscient and we can't solve things like that. But if there's a way to solve these problems, shouldn't we be solving them?
Definitely. And that's the thing. I mean, ultimately, we use atheism as the belief or proposition gods do not exist. But even if you're just doing it as a lack of belief in gods, right? In some way, shape or form, non-theists / atheists don't believe in gods. But it shouldn't stop there. Like, regardless of your where your ontological or epistemic position is, like, there should be more to it after than that. It's okay. Maybe there aren't gods. Maybe none of them actually exist. Maybe this life is all we've got. Maybe there's no afterlife. There's no reincarnation. All we've got is our time on this earth, and then we're gone. So we should make the most of it. But we shouldn't just make the most of it for ourselves, because there's generations of people who are coming after us. Some of us will have kids, some of us won't. But regardless of whether you have kids or not, why not leave the world in just a slightly better place than when you landed on it? If you can just improve it that tiny little bit at a time. And this is why we need to come together. And it's like we were having that conversation with Luke about the humanist societies. They sort of try to do it, but again, the humanist societies take far too much of an atheist edge, and they deal with foreign problems and, these atheists are being killed here and these homosexuals are being killed there. And yes, great, we need to deal with those issues, but we need to deal with local issues. We need to have more community issues, but we don't have anything like that. So what do we do? And I wouldn't say that, a thing that's coming in there saying that atheism is not the correct path regardless of detail. I think that's sort of missing the point. That's just what you believe at the end of the day. It's, whether the gods exist or they don't. Atheism can be the correct path. Atheists need to do something. It's us as people, regardless of whether we're theists or atheists or some other form of non-theist. It's us that have to group together and do something. But honestly, I don't know what, because we can't come to an agreement and get enough people to actually have these conversations, because as we were saying, it's not for us to do, it's for humanist societies to do, it's someone else's problem. There's all this passing the buck to someone else. All we do is lack a belief. Really? I find internet atheism really poor in this regard, and it's a shame. We're not all like this. We're not.
No.
But I think we are so few and far between, at least on the internet, that we can't have these good dialogues and get people involved in thinking about these things in different ways and moving forward. And if any of you have any suggestions, that would be great. Because I don't have many. And the only ones that I have need people to buy in. I need to find a way to get people to buy in first.
Yeah. Going back to this shows that atheism is not the right path. That, like you said, it sort of misses the point and kind of skirts around the issue. But you could also say here, well, Christianity isn't the path because Muslims do more. But then you could say, well, Islam isn't the path because look at the damage that some Muslims do. Look at how Iran is when it comes to freedoms. Look at how some of the Christians are, where, they go out and yell at people going to a family planning clinic, or, they try and manipulate the government into creating these laws, like outlawing, think of Britain in the 80s, where homosexuality was outlawed. That was Christians being Christians. So you can say, well, this group over here does these things, so that shows it's the right path. Well, in any large group of people, you're going to have these examples that you can point out and say, well, this shows it's not the right path because look at how these people are. But look at how those people over there are. By focusing on the worst of the bunch, you're missing out on the best of the bunch.
Yeah, definitely. Quite a comment that's just come in that I think we need to address, because as we're dealing with common misconceptions, we are born atheists. Now, I'd say that we're not. We're essentially born without the cognitive abilities to consider propositions or hold beliefs. We can't understand what a God is, so we are innocent of the proposition, and I don't think that we should ascribe a position such as that to something that can't think about this concept. I think it was Oppie that came up with innocence first, although I'm not sure if it was. And I think that's a great term for it. I mean, essentially, we're ignorant. We're born ignorant, but ignorant doesn't sound as nice. Although then you can say some people saying innocent and it's dealing with guilt, but you're not talking about innocence in the guilty sense. You're talking about in the naive sense. Someone who is innocent of something, they're completely naive of it. So again, it comes back to ignorance, but it just says it in a nicer way.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really do anything or add anything to the discourse to say babies are atheists. Just all it says is, we're tabula rasa who don't hold a belief in God. Okay, fair enough, but they can't really do anything. And, what happens if we are born believing these anthropomorphic things, like babies anthropomorphize animals and things like that, or they believe that there's these higher powers. And I mean, not all kids do, but a lot of kids do. That's probably cultural influence and much more.
I mean, evolutionary speaking, we are prone to superstition.
To the rustle in the bush being something,
being an agent rather than being nothing, or the wind. Because there was a higher chance of us surviving if we assumed that the rustle in the bush was something. So therefore, we'd either get ready to fight or we'd run away. And the people that were just like, it's nothing, sometimes would die. So the people who were more paranoid happened to survive. And then this superstition led into rituals. Oh, well, this didn't happen. And then there was no rain and everybody got sick and died. So we must do this ritual to make something happy to make this happen, because that's how we can explain how religion at least somewhat started. So from a naturalistic perspective.
Yeah. But I mean, if we focus on adults who are atheists, or teenagers who are atheists who have actually been able to question this, and we teach them that atheism is more than just nihilism. Atheism is more than just lacking a belief in God. We still have purpose and meaning that we can bring about and fulfill, and there's certain aspects of society. It's kind of like you get those kids who smash up their neighborhood and then complain at what a wreck their neighborhood is. You know, you don't want atheism to become something like that. You want it to be full of people who want to not smash up the neighborhood and complain how bad it is, but make the neighborhood better.
Mm. Even if it's just one nail at a time.
Yeah, basically. And like Luke has mentioned, and sorry to bring this up, Luke, but he mentioned when his father died, he felt there was nowhere he could go. And things like that might push people back towards religion. And if the whole purpose is to kind of lay out religion, get rid of it and make it so people don't need it, well, then you're going to need support centers elsewhere. So atheist support centers, you know, you got humanist churches and things like that, humanist chaplains. So we need these kind of support networks for atheists.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is what Nietzsche was talking about. You know, we create these things because by killing off God, we lose these things. And these things are important to functioning society and living a healthy psychological life.
Yeah, I mean, we've evolved as social beings, and you know, we are very tribalistic by nature. We do have these in-group, out-group biases, and if you come to a group that claims to not even be a group,
yeah,
well, where do you go? You're left alone. And maybe that's why so many of us atheists on the internet are quite. I'm trying to think of a nice way to call us all bellends. And that was nicer than what was going through my head.
Yeah.
But we can be overly aggressive and heuristic, and maybe that's because we don't feel like that we've got anywhere to be. A lot of us have, especially in places like America or some of the more fundamentalist states around the world, have had some serious harm done to us by religion, and we are being oppressed by religion. We're quite lucky in the UK that this doesn't happen as much. Little bits here and there, but generally it's not a big thing. So we are quite lucky, but I can understand there are some people who do feel this massive harm, and they leave their religion, and all they have left is attacking that religion because that's how they get their likes on Twitter and things like that, and they get pats on backs. Oh yeah, you took that one down. Because that is the closest thing that they now have to a community of people supporting them.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand that they have a frustration and an anger that they need to get out. You know, if your mom told you your whole life that you couldn't go outside because you would burn in the sun because you have an allergy, and then you went out in the sun and you spent the day and you got a tan and nothing happened, you would be very angry. But it needs to be moved beyond that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we need to get over it.
Sort of, yeah. Those people need to heal. And again, if you're caught up in a community where that healing can't come, you're just going to be caught up in that fervor forever, where you're spurring each other on. Yes, get religion, get back at them, destroy it. They're liars and they're this and they're that. Well, there needs to be a part of the community where they can go to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. But what?
Yeah.
You know.
But again, there's bigger names in the community that, I mean, we're nobodies. No, we have people that listen to us and we have friends who come and they join us. But there are people out there that have actual, not power, but the ability to influence how people think. And they don't. They don't use that power, for want of a better word, to create a better community and create values. They use it to promote books or sell T-shirts.
Yeah. So really, we kind of need to find a way to communicate with these people that do have the bigger sway in the atheist communities, and try and broach the subjects with them. And what can we actually do that's a little bit more than just being anti-religion? What can we offer people as a solution, something that is better to it? But I mean, how do we communicate with these people? They're often quite so entrenched in very single-minded views, like Rock's being atheists, and
or just involved in flooding any conversation that comes about religion with memes or insults. And you have these people who argue that they want to normalize atheism. They want to normalize not believing in God. Well, isn't part of the way to do that to show that we're actually good people as well? I mean, how are you going to normalize atheism if every time somebody brings up their belief, you go into this raging monster mode? You go Jekyll and Hyde on them.
Yeah. I actually, some of the ones that I think that we atheists definitely have to stop doing in that regard is, do you ever sometimes see someone on social media, and they've got a sick relative or something like that, and they just ask for a prayer, and then you see floods of atheists just storming onto this, talking about how God's fake and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, this person is in pain right now. They're asking for something that they think is going to help. Okay, we don't think it will. That's fine. The person is getting medical treatment or whatever. So you don't have that argument to it. I mean, I can understand the faith healing ones. You're trying to undo harm there. But if this person's got someone in hospital and they're really upset, or they've just lost someone, and they just want some comfort, there is no point in attacking someone who's in that level of pain, and doing the whole quote tweet thing and getting more and more people to dogpile them. It's atrocious behavior, and I don't know why we do it. We can all demonstrate negative behaviors from time to time, and there might be certain occasions where actually that might be needed. But when someone's in pain, I can't ever see how that is something we should do.
Yeah, the values that you're creating now, and the meaning is for them. Because if you think we have our meaning and the way we see the world, but those religious people that are being attacked are also creating meaning about the world. And the meaning that atheists are creating for them is that atheists are just horrible people that will attack people in pain just to score points. Just to ridicule a believer. They argue that they're concerned about truth, and they'll argue things like, well, we want to stop oppression. Well, you're doing the oppression in this case.
Yeah. Why do we do it? We need to sort of attack this at both ends. We need to encourage the good behaviors and the solutions and the other options, the actual community. But we also need to find some way to stop these negative behaviors, the bullying, the dogpiling. The poor logic, the bad philosophy, the terrible history.
And one thing I'll add here as well is, okay, there are atheists that are in places like the Bible Belt. They're entrenched in areas and cultures where they're surrounded by these people, and if they speak out, that they get attacked, bullied, mocked. All the things that atheists are doing to Christians happen to atheists too in certain kind of circumstances. And as you said, we need to attack this from both ends in the atheist community. Well, it has to be attacked from both ends or multiple ends, because the Christians and the Muslims and all that. I don't really see Sikhs doing it, and you get Hindus who do it, but it's kind of rare. But those religious communities need to attack their end as well to stop this kind of thing. There needs to be like a meeting of minds.
Yeah. How do we do it? I mean, maybe
we rant on YouTube videos.
It's either that or maybe genocide is the option. Just get rid of all humans and then it's not a problem for them.
Told you before, anti-natalism is the answer.
But I don't know. It's
they need to read more Nietzsche, basically, and understand it.
Yeah, I think it's like we say. I mean, both with the internet atheists and the internet theists, I think they both need to get more involved in philosophical arguments, both for and against the existence of gods, but other things as well. So often, topics like knowledge and morality come up, and we're terrible at those. I get frustrated actually having some of the same conversations over and over again. It's sometimes even with the same people, because it's just like, this is really basic stuff that we're going through here. How are you still getting this so very wrong?
That's why we try to bring these topics up here, in the hopes that somebody might listen to us one day.
Yeah, it happens
and
occasionally.
We try to bring up different topics. It does. I mean, we've met some amazing people.
Yeah, we have met some absolutely fantastic people, and we've managed to capture most of them and take them onto our Discord channel. They're ours now.
I think it's more like they adopted us than we adopted them.
Yeah, I know. They look after me.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, these are questions that need to be asked. And the points that Nietzsche brings up about creating new meanings, creating new morals, creating new values, these are discussions I think should probably start happening within the atheist community, especially from some of the bigger names.
Yeah, but then we need to get
if all
the bigger names to realize it.
Sorry.
We just need to get the bigger names to realize it first. So how do we get them to actually realize these things? Because I reckon there are some of us out there that really do, and I think there are a lot of us that think the same way about these topics. But we're in that sort of no man's land where there aren't too many people to have these conversations with, and we can't reach the people who do currently have that level of influence to actually get somewhere with it.
Yeah. And I sort of see it shifting on some channels. Like there are some channels that are now moved away from this, bring in a theist, put them in the spotlight, and hound them and insult them and mock them. And I think if that is becoming a trend, then perhaps that might overturn. Like, there's a channel it used to be called the Atheist Roundtable. Now it's the Atheist Network Group, I think. And they're trying to create a different kind of discourse. And I think if more channels like that are appearing and those kind of things are happening, then perhaps we will see a shift from the old guard to the new guard.
That's fair. Yeah, I suppose that's sort of the way things work, though, isn't it? I mean, as much as many of us like to say that there is no community, we are a community, quite a separated community, joined by electrons, and there are all these different channels on the internet, and as we start to see shifts in attitude happening, it does sort of snowball, I guess. And hopefully this shift in attitude will become a more positive thing, and we will have better interfaith discussions. We will have better arguments, and understand people's positions better, actually have dialectic conversations instead of just going, prove it, where's your evidence, meme. And being there to support people who need the fucking support.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things. I mean, if you think about somebody leaving a cult, right? And a lot of atheists tend to call Christianity a cult or Islam a cult. So if somebody was coming out of a cult, you wouldn't just say, "Oh, here you go, you're out in the free world now." You want to create a way for them to actually understand the world and experience the world in a different way, not just go keep your mindset and go out and do the things you were doing before. Just don't believe in that cult anymore. If you don't strip away the behaviors and create new meanings and new values, then they won't change. They'll just find a new group to adopt and keep those same patterns.
Which is why I think a lot of the more negative behaviors we see from atheists come from people who have been in very fundamentalist, dogmatic, denominations of their whatever faith they're part of. As you mentioned, like the Bible Belt and stuff like that, they're often quite dogmatic there, and the people that come out of the Bible Belt and are atheists are also quite dogmatic and fundamentalist, and so perhaps that is a big part of it. So how do we change those behaviors as well? And other than this snowballing thing that we're talking about how there is a slow shift in various channels online and the way they're taking it. It's less so much of having phone calls with theists and berating them and slamming the phone down on them, and it's more having a dialectic conversation. Are there any other ways that we can actually start to, change the behaviors of certain atheists online that do this?
That's a good question. And if you think about one of the statements that was said in Nietzsche's bit there, he says, maybe I've come too early. These things haven't taken hold yet. That's what he means. This whole process started a long time ago, and we're just now getting to the point that the madman is seeing. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that he came too early, it's that nobody listened to him. And it's time we start listening to him, and it's time we start improving these things. Now, you talk about the Bible Belt and people suffering there, and people say, oh, well, I want to help them. Well, if we admit that we are a community, and we admit that there are certain things that we value, and helping people to escape their religion is one of those values, support networks could be set up for people who want to get out of those kind of communities and into a different kind of community. Like, if you think about the Amish, they have like a couple of years where the child will go out into the world. And they'll experience the world outside of the Amish community. And if they want to go back, they go back. And if they want to, stay in the other world, among the English, I think they call it. But there are networks set up where it's the ex-Amish who will look after the people coming out into that thing, and they'll help them get jobs. So why can't atheists be setting up similar kind of community support networks for those who are wanting to leave the more demanding and dogmatic areas and saying, well, look, we'll do our best to help you. We'll do our best to get you set up and find jobs and help you escape that mindset, that life. But again, it depends on us accepting we're a community and accepting that we have to create meaning and value for people. Not just say, okay, you don't believe in God, that's enough. Go out, go make your way in the world now.
Yeah. It's quite a dropping someone off the cliff, really, isn't it? Oh, great, now you're with us. Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
Do you know, actually, we atheists, say something similar about, and it's not necessarily just atheists, but um, getting into a bit of a touchy subject that I'm not going to go too deep on. But people who are pro-choice often say that those who are pro-life aren't actually pro-life. They're just pro-birth, because as soon as the kid's born, they don't give a fuck about it. They won't help support it. They won't do anything like that. And in general, that is the case. You know, well, she shouldn't have had the kid if she couldn't afford it. Well, you made her have the fucking kid.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of thing that we atheists do with getting people to leave their religion. Oh, you've left your religion now? Cool. See ya.
See ya. Come on Twitter and help us pick on other religious people so other religious people leave their religion. Okay?
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, how often have you changed your mind because you've been bullied on the internet? Hasn't it more made you sink back into your position and think, well, that person's a dick. I'm not going to listen to anything that they have to say. And I tend to find that's the case. There are people who, just by the way that they behave, I'm turned off to their position. They might even be right. They might be. But because of the way they've gone about things, I'm just like, I don't care. I'm ignoring you.
Yeah. And I mean, how often do you listen to a religious person who screams at you and tells you how evil you are and how bad you are for not believing in God? You don't. You just switch off immediately.
Yeah, that you're irrational, that you're illogical, that you're claiming this and that you believe that, telling you what you believe. Basically, not even taking the time to understand your position, not being charitable, not presenting what you could in the best light, not having a conversation with you, just talking at you. And you're just like, yeah, you're right, you're turned off. Well, do you know what? If there was any chance of me believing in God today, you've squandered it because you're a cock.
Yeah. And the same could be said for atheists on places like Twitter.
Yeah. Both atheists and theists on Twitter. I see them both doing it. It's so aggressive, and people just insulting each other left, right, and centre, and coming up with terrible arguments, fallacious statements, playing fallacy bingo whilst getting the fallacies wrong. And it's just, oh. Yeah. And it's not just Twitter this happens. I mean, it's all social media. I mean, there's even a little bit going on in our chat where it's like, this isn't the way the conversation should go. You're not being charitable. You're not presenting these conversations in the best light. You're not taking the time to actually understand what others think about these things. So have a conversation. Don't just say, atheists are irrational, they're illogical, or atheism's a trap, or something like that, because that's ridiculous, and it is. But yeah. It's why I haven't really been addressing the comments in the chat. Yeah, Cheshire is saying that in regards to the pro-life, they're not pro-life, they're just anti-choice. That's one way to say it. So they're anti-free will. That's okay, it's all deterministic anyway.
It's the determinist.
Sorry?
Luke is the determinist.
Yeah. True.
But why? But yeah, I mean, you raised a kind of good point here as well with the whole attacking them and the atheist community just dogpiling and attacking, and sort of being like now you've had your baby, fuck off. We don't care. That's one of the things that atheists could think about, where it's okay, now you've converted, I don't give a fuck. Just go out. Just convince other people not to believe. One of the things we should be thinking about is why? What is the purpose of taking these things away from them? If it's because religion causes harm, well, by insulting and mocking and removing these values and these purposes from people, aren't we causing some kind of harm? If we're taking that purpose to live for away in that community and the values and the things that gives them joy in life, and we're just saying, well, too bad you're atheist now. Go out and learn to be happy. Aren't we causing some kind of suffering and harm too?
Yeah, I would consider the number of theists that go, well, if I didn't have God to ground my morality in and my behaviors in, then I don't think that I would, necessarily behave in a good way. I think I'd become more selfish. There are some that say they'd go out raping and murdering. I don't for a second believe that they actually would, but I do believe they think they would. Um, but it's neither here nor there. But theists do have this sort of thing, like, if I don't have anything to ground my morality in, and you do, as an atheist, you can have something to ground your morality in. Yeah, yes, there are ways of explaining it and how it started and through evolution and everything like that, but there is a lot more to morality like that. You've got to learn a bit about it. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how we atheists actually need to take more time looking into these topics, such as morality, because it would give us a much better understanding, and it would give us an ability to present something to a theist that says, well, I don't know how I'd ground my morality. And I think, well, here, look, these are different ways that morality can be grounded. These are different standards of morality. And these are different ways that you can look at it. And this is an objectivist approach, and this is, a subjectivist approach, and this is utilitarianism. This is Kantianism, and so on and so forth. And you can have all these different conversations. And look, there's different ways to ground morality. But you could also say, and there seems to be a unifying thing with all morality that seems to be, as a social species, around well-being, collaborative and cohesive societies, and flourishing of the species. So that is our grounding. That is what we should be focusing on and looking at it. And whichever ethical system or combination that you might end up choosing, you will find that there is this thing in there. And you might have to borrow from a few to work out certain problems, because we don't have all the knowledge in the universe yet. And I don't know if we ever will get to a point when we actually can tell everything 100%. Yes, this is definitely good. This is definitely bad. But we get closer and closer to that idea of what good and bad is. We don't look back and say, oh, well, slavery used to be moral. No, it used to be considered moral, but we realize it was never moral. And we'll find more and more things on that as we, learn more about morality and ourselves as a species. But we atheists have to take the time to look into it instead of just going, it's all subjective.
Yeah. I mean, that actually kind of raises a good point as well. There's a lot of theists that I've met who say that they give to charity because of their religion. I'm not saying that they wouldn't if the religion was taken away from them, but if that's what's giving them the cause to give to charity and make the world a better place, you're taking a risk by taking that away from them, but not giving them somewhere else to, or some other reason to give to charity.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think that most people probably would actually find a reason, but they're scared. They're scared at this point in time. That, well, without God, what would I do? Like, well, actually, there are a lot of atheists that don't have God and do a lot of good work. It's just not done through a church or anything like that. But we don't have those conversations.
And they are conversations that are needed.
Very much so. Hmm.
And
no, go for it.
Sorry. I was going to say, there needs to be discussions around this ideological purity of what atheism is, or what it should be, or how atheists shouldn't be focused on a community, and this one thing that kind of unites us all should only be that one thing that unites us all. But if we want this political power, if we want this normalization, then maybe we should be unifying under this unifying kind of property.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Sorry, I cut off then.
No. I think you basically there's been a mic drop. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Dave. I think I do think that we need to find some way to approach this and get the word out there, and get more atheists being more charitable, but equally more theists being more charitable. The thing is, I mean, a lot of theists have been indoctrinated to see us as evil. And then when we act the way we do online, we're essentially showing them, see, they are evil. Now, I get it. You might, especially people in the Bible Belt and things like that, they might have had harm done to them by their religious counterparts and their religion. And they may still get bullied. I mean, even when I lived in America, and I told people I didn't believe in anything. Obviously not meaning anything, but the context of religion. And they say, oh, you have to believe something. You have to have a religion. Like, why? Why do I have to religion? It seems, a bit silly to me, if I'm honest. I don't see why. No, you've got to have something. You've got to have something. And so I said, okay, I'm a Wiccan. And they're like, okay, that's fine. But apparently, being a Wiccan was more acceptable than being an atheist. I mean, I was technically an agnostic at the time, but semantics. And so even this, and you could see people, the way they I once stayed at my friend. We went on a road trip with my friend, and we stayed at his uncle's one night. He lived, I don't know, on a farm somewhere south of where we lived. That's all I can really remember. And they woke us up at 6 a.m. to go to church because it was a Sunday morning. And I was like, what the fuck is this? But obviously I was polite and didn't say anything and just got on with it. And then they were like, you need to go up, and they did the whole communion thing. And I was like, well, no. And what's it called? Oh, what, you haven't been confirmed? And they started teasing me because I hadn't been confirmed. I wasn't even Catholic. I wasn't even religious. But even that at such a young age, there was this, oh my God, you haven't been confirmed. Oh, what an idiot. You're going to hell. So you can see that at a young age. And you can see how these behaviors start to breed negative thoughts in atheists as well. So we can explain. I'm not excusing atheist behavior online, but we can explain why they do behave this way. Because, I mean, that was just a minor dose of what people get all day, every day for being atheists. And it's not nice, especially in the more fundamentalist areas. So if we can have that sort of experience and blow it up, we can understand why there are so many sour atheists out there. But the problem is we're not helping the problem. We're actually making it worse. We're creating a bigger divide by being like that. And we are showing these theists that actually we are the evil things that they've always been told to be, and they don't want to be like them. And then we're getting further and further away, and you end up bickering and insulting, and then people look from the sidelines and go, I don't want to be like either of them. Fucking hell.
It shouldn't be a bar fight. It should be a dialogue.
Oh, it definitely should. But yeah, there we go. Yeah, the chat is going on and on. I can't even keep up with it. I'm sorry, everyone. If anyone does have any questions on this topic, though, please tag me in and ask them, and I'll read them out, and Dave can answer them.
Only if it's philosophical questions.
Yeah. If it's random inane bullshit,
Everything else.
That's my speciality.
Exactly.
Chess says, have you been in a debate though?
Wait, isn't that this has been? Haven't we
Sorry?
been debating each other?
Oh,
Like, haven't we been debating each other just now? Except,
we just
coming to
agreed.
an agreement. That's a debate. Close enough.
Have you heard from Smalley Chesh? I'm interested in if anything can actually done anything like that. We've got a question. Can you cite one instance where atheists have grouped up for charity or group good? I mean, there's the Humanist Society, the Atheist Humanists. They do some stuff like that, but they tend to be doing goods in other areas, where people are being jailed for being atheists, or there's, big immoral things like that happening. I haven't really seen anything local happening like that. Dave mentioned a charity earlier. It was the Atheists Helping Homeless, was it?
Yeah. And you have people like Randolph Richardson who do blood drives, and they take blankets and sleeping bags and food and things like that to the homeless as well.
So there you go. So there's
there
3 citations.
Yeah, there are groups that do it, but they're not as well known.
No.
And like I said previously, a lot of the times atheists will have to piggyback off the kind of church charities and things like that, because they have the networks already set up. I mean, let's face it, they've been going a lot longer.
Oh yeah, but that is the case. They've got the infrastructure in place, haven't they?
Exactly.
Yeah. Or do they do it for tax write-offs and hide income tax? Well, seeing as churches don't pay tax, can you really say that?
Yeah.
That's not really a good avenue to go down.
I mean, there are probably mega churches like the one you mentioned earlier. I can't remember his name now. The really rich guy.
Joel Osteen.
That's it. I think there's people like that who create churches so that they can take in a lot of tax-free money.
Definitely.
But I wouldn't say that all churches are like that.
No, God, no. I think some churches do some fantastic work. And when I'm talking about churches, I'm not just talking about Christianity. I'm talking about every faith's equivalent of a church. It's a single word that I'm using to mean any of these things.
Yeah. And I think there are people that go into like the church and things like that because they genuinely want to help people and help make the world a better place. But again, not all. But no. that same can be said for any kind of group of people.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Apparently, Josiah says that the ACA has also done charity drives and he's donated to them himself. Yeah, fair play to you.
Nice one.
So, I mean, that's just it. There is stuff that's done. And there are charities out there that aren't affiliated with or without a religion as well. There's a lot of ones for... I can't remember what it is. Like a lot of medical conditions and things like that. Generally, they some of the newer ones aren't necessarily backed by a church or anything like that. There are some that might be, so support St. John's Ambulance, which is obviously supported by a church. But then you can have like the General Air Ambulance charity, which isn't necessarily backed by a church.
Yeah, when I was doing my undergrad, I did 6 days a week at the British Heart Foundation as well.
Yeah, and that one's not attached to anything religious, is it? There are a few charity shops down the street, and some of the charity shops were backed by a church, and some of them weren't. So, yeah, you can find it. So there are more and more, and I'm sure if we were to sit down and write out a list, we'd probably find a lot more, but they're all very niche. And I think most of the non-theistic charities don't go, "Oh, we're atheists doing charity work." They just go, "We're doing charity work."
Yeah.
And maybe
another thing.
Sorry.
Oops, sorry.
I was just going to say, maybe actually we need to present that, because theists might go, "Well, look at all these, church-based ones. And where's the atheist ones? And we can actually go, well, they're not specifically atheist ones, but they're not religious charities. So
yeah,
they're non-theistic charities. They are done, and there are some atheist organisations that do charity work too. But maybe we need to actually consider that as part of it, and that is part of what we atheists do actually say with the fact that we are only united over this one thing. But you can see atheists doing this stuff, or non-theists, or whatever definition you want to use. So that's another way to look at it as well.
yeah. And if you're so busy looking for how atheists aren't doing these things, you'll overlook the ones that are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's just it. I mean, we're all guilty of doing it. We all take a narrow view. We all have an idea in our mind, and we end up looking for the things that back that up, and we forget to look at the bigger picture. We're all very guilty of it. We atheists look at the worst of religion, and a lot of religious people look at the worst of atheists.
Yeah.
And we also ignore the worst of our own tribes. We do it. It's natural. It's in-group, out-group bias. Right? We all do it. And what we need to learn to do is actually take an inward look and genuinely go, fuck, actually, there's a big portion of us that are not great, and we need to address with this. And we can actually look at the others and go, wow, there's a big portion of them that actually are doing it. And we need the other side, if you want to put things into sides, that are the same as well and do the same. And all of a sudden, you might get this meeting in the middle where all the best can interact with each other on all the things that you do have in common and you can agree on, and you can do all these good things together. And it doesn't have to be because God or because of not God. You're just doing it together. And all those people down there that are the fundamentalists of both groups eventually will either have to join the good lot or fuck off.
Leave the hooligans to fight in the back alley while the best of us cheer on the teams.
Yeah.
And you raise a good point here. There's a buzzword going about the atheist community at the moment, which is internal critique. I'm doing an internal critique of your view, blah, blah, blah. And the internal critique is a thing when you're doing kind of critiques. But rather than doing an internal critique of religion or Christianity, these things need to be done, don't get me wrong. But perhaps it's time we started doing an internal critique of ourselves as well.
Mm.
Yeah, we should be looking inwards as well, not just outwards. And again, this is something that Nietzsche talks about. If we're going to create meaning in these new groups, it can't just be done by, using a common enemy. We have to look inwards and to create the Übermensch, the Superman, the better man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically going down the virtue ethics path.
It sort of is. And I mean, virtue ethics is something that could be useful to the atheist community, looking into it and discussing it and passing it around, because it's a form of ethics that can be that doesn't need to be grounded in any kind of religion. It's grounded in figuring out how best to behave.
Yeah. I do think virtue ethics is one of those things that really needs to be taught at a young age, and get people thinking about it, and because I think, like manners, it will become something that it's just built into people.
Yeah.
When we hold open a door for someone, we say please and thank you. The way we eat in a more polite way, especially in certain company in certain places. And if we actually started installing this at a younger age, perhaps all that we're discussing now won't be a problem anymore.
No, it'll start to expand out and to create the better community.
Yeah, you're right, Philip. There are a ton of ethical frameworks that don't require religion. I mean, we discussed a few of them earlier. Well, I mentioned a couple of them earlier anyway. I didn't go into detail at all. But there are tons that don't require it. We're just talking about how virtue ethics is obviously more inward agent based rather than looking at rules or what's the word? Consequences. There you go. Thank you. So, if you keep teaching yourselves these good behaviors and you keep learning and thinking about it, eventually it'll become second nature, like, polite behavior in society. Yes, you're right, Philip. Pretty much everything but divine command theory is... yeah, so... Chesh also says there's a difference between humanist secular that aren't necessarily atheists, but they aren't theist either. You're right. You're definitely right. There are secular theists, or there are even theists that aren't necessarily secular. They're still religious theists, but they support secular values. But generally, a lot of the so I'm signed up to Humanists UK, and they definitely seem to have a very atheist approach to them. I get a lot of their mails, and I must admit it's got to the point where I've stopped looking at it because it is always about something overseas, something bad happening. Let's support this person, let's support that. And it's like, that's great, but there's only so much you can do abroad with these things. And I think that there needs to be done more for atheists locally. There is no support for atheists locally, which is generally what we've been talking about the entire night. And yes, there are some things that we definitely do need to broach abroad. Of course there are. But I think we need to support people at home so that we can then support people abroad better.
Think of it something like the liberal nationalism.
Yeah. You'll have to check that video out if you don't know what that is. God, that was a long while ago, that one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That even last year? It might have been.
I think it was. I think it was like one of the first streams that we did.
Oh, wow.
But we were still trying to find topics that people might be interested in.
Yeah, that might be one of the ones where I actually carried on playing the turntables throughout the entire stream as well.
I think it was, yeah.
Brilliant. But we've evolved a little bit from then. Not much, though.
Yeah, we've just got lazier.
To be fair, the conversations got a little bit more complicated as well, and I couldn't handle mixing at the same time, so I started doing it before the stream. But obviously, I haven't been doing that at the moment because this room, as you can see, it's my temporary office until we can make my new office in 2-3 months' time. So there might not be, unless I can find space for it, there might not be any mixes for a while.
Yeah, hopefully not too long, no. Because I know people do like them. Like Leon loves them, and Opie likes them, and
that's it.
No. Because there's been comments on YouTube as well, if I remember right.
A couple.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And it sets us apart.
Yeah. You got the brains. I got the tech.
Oh well, then we're fucked because all we've got is tech. I ain't got no brains.
Was there anything else you felt that we needed to cover off tonight, Dave, before we end it for the night?
No. That generally gets across what Nietzsche was talking about, and why atheists should be thinking about what he was saying, and some of the ways that we think that they should be thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. There's there's a lot that comes out of Nietzsche. I definitely have to read more because
he can be kind of a hard read.
Yeah.
Once you get used to his style, though, it becomes pretty easy. He can be very dramatic, and he's not like when you get used to analytic philosophy, it's very different than reading, say, Nietzsche, who talks in a sort of poetic and dramatic way, but the philosophy is in what's being said,
Right.
rather than outright there. You have to pull it out of what's being said, which is good because it gets you thinking and gets you used to bringing out meaning from things.
Yeah, but I suppose equally it does lead to a lot of misinterpretations.
Yeah, just ask the Nazis.
Brilliant. I'll have to as well, as soon as we've finished the basics of the inside of the house, do a little take the phone around and give everyone a little preview of the new house.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's definitely smaller than the old house, but it's much nicer.
Yeah, we were impressed by your kitchen because we've got. Have you ever been to a Welsh house?
Only when I've stayed with friends in Wales.
You know, we all have tiny kitchens.
Yeah, it's basically about half the size of this room.
Yeah, that's what our kitchen is like. So we were kind of jealous.
It's awesome. The oven's amazing as well.
Yeah.
I've just started using it. I must admit, for the first week, I didn't even turn the oven on because I was too scared to use it. It's like, this kitchen's so pristine. I don't want to mess everything up. But yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll definitely make sure that once we've sorted things out and we've got all the furniture made up and some of the boxes clear, we'll do a view around the place. And yeah, can't wait.
Nice one.
So next week, I think if Luke is still available, yes, Chesh, you can have a house tour. If Luke is still available, we will have him on discussing mental illness on Tuesday. So that is the plan. Pencil it in. I will wait until I can get confirmation from Luke to see if that's going to be our discussion. But that is going to be, what you can expect for now. But anything can happen between now and then. So nothing's set in stone.
Apart from my kidney stones.
Aren't they set in kidneys? Or are your kidneys stone as well?
My kidneys are stone now. I'm old and fossilized.
So you wouldn't travel in time?
I can barely travel off the couch.
And if anyone got the reference to that movie, well done. Right, so thank you everyone who has listened tonight and everybody that's been joining in the chat. I'm sorry I haven't been able to keep up with it quite as much as I normally do, but it's been flying by tonight. But yes, we should be back next Tuesday. All things considered, it should be with Luke, but if it's not, we'll make something up on the day.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah. Tonight we've been discussing God is Dead, the often misquoted phrase from Nietzsche, and what we atheists can and should be doing, and the negative behaviours that both theists and atheists seem to demonstrate. You've been watching the Fresh Air Sci-Fi show. I am Joe.
And I'm not Nietzsche.
And he's not dead.
Not yet. I'm close, but not yet.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, all.